Every day, thousands of service companies wake up and try to win the exact same way. They lower their prices, they promise faster response times, or pour money into louder marketing. The baseline expectation in these industries is simple professionalism. You show up, repair the leak or install the system, finish the job ticket, and collect the payment. You do exactly what is required on the invoice, and you leave. The hidden risk in this baseline is that any licensed contractor can perform that exact sequence of events. If an organization only executes the expected tasks, they blend in with the crowd, making the company forgettable to the customer. Operating strictly within those minimum requirements leaves a business vulnerable. You surrender control of your market position, leaving competitors to dictate your value and the prices you can charge. To understand how to break out of this cycle, we have to look at the historical origin of the extra mile. In the time of Jesus, the Roman Empire occupied Israel. Roman law granted a soldier the authority to force any civilian to carry his heavy military pack for exactly 1 mile. This was a legal requirement, backed entirely by military force. For the local population, this mandatory walk was humiliating. It stripped the civilian of their autonomy, replaced it with strict submission, and fueled deep resentment with every step. At exactly 1 mile, the legal obligation ended. The civilian would drop the pack and walk away. The compliance stopped at a strict physical boundary. This first-mile dynamic is driven by powerlessness. Whether it is an ancient civilian forced to carry a pack, or a modern business trapped in a purely transactional relationship, doing only what is demanded leaves you out of control. Against this backdrop of forced labor, Jesus introduced a counterintuitive instruction. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them too. This chart shows the timeline of that walk. The first mile, marked by this gray line, is driven entirely by compliance. The soldier is dictating the terms. The dynamic flips the moment you pass the marker and keep walking. You are no longer reacting to a command. The soldier expects you to quit, but your choice to continue disarms hostility and allows you to reclaim your autonomy. This voluntary extension is a display of controlled strength. By intentionally violating expectations, you instantly shift the power dynamic away from the person making the demand and back to yourself. When applied to a modern service organization, the second mile translates to intentional care and detail, delivered without being asked. It looks like taking the time to explain how a new system works, rather than simply installing it. It means catching a safety hazard not listed on the job ticket, or leaving a home visibly cleaner than it was when you arrived. This compounding curve graph plots trust against business growth. While the minimum required effort of the first mile builds simple transactions, the unprompted excellence of the second mile builds trust, and trust compounds over time. As that trust builds, it produces measurable results. Customers leave 5-star reviews because they feel cared for. They stay with the company for life, and they generate high referral rates by talking about the exceptional service they received. This level of service separates a business from the race to the bottom. By shifting the relationship from a transaction to a partnership, companies operating in the second mile earn the right to charge fairly for their value, rather than competing solely on price. Delivering effort beyond the invoice generates a higher return on investment than traditional advertising. It turns excellence into direct growth. You cannot fake that level of external customer care if your internal team culture remains strictly transactional. Inside the company, the second mile looks like a technician staying an extra 5 minutes to prevent a future callback, or stepping up to train an apprentice without being prompted by management. But there is a strict rule governing this behavior, known as the leadership ceiling. An organization's culture will never rise above the standard actively modeled by its management. Leaders establish this standard by stepping into high-pressure moments alongside their team. They invest in training beyond the minimum requirements, and they solve complex problems rather than assigning blame. You simply cannot demand second-mile performance from frontline technicians if leadership is only providing first-mile support. To build this culture, organizations can implement a 30-day second-mile challenge. For 1 month, every team member commits to executing one extra action per day. These actions should be small, simple, and highly intentional. They do not need to be dramatic. At the end of those 30 days, the team publicly shares the strongest examples. Highlighting these specific stories reinforces the standard and solidifies the behavior deep into the company's DNA. Every organization eventually faces a choice. You can allow your company to be defined by external pressures, like labor shortages, severe weather delays, and market conditions, or you can be defined by an unyielding internal standard. Ordinary companies allow the market to dictate their baseline compliance. Extraordinary companies force the market to reward their chosen character.